Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something today. You didn't just wake up on accident. You didn't just stumble through your life by coincidence. You were marked by the Master before you ever took your first breath. When God marks you, life can't help but notice. Your environment starts reacting. People start treating you different. And your soul deep down starts stirring because heaven wrote your name on its plan. You see, when you are marked by God, there's something inside you that just won't let you settle. You could be sitting in a room full of people, all smiling, all satisfied, but deep down you feel this holy uneasiness, this restlessness, this quiet stirring that refuses to let you get comfortable in a life that's smaller than the one God designed for you. It's like trying to sleep in a bed that's too short for your soul. You stretch, you toss, you turn, but you just can't seem to settle. That's not frustration, that's divine agitation. That's heaven reminding you that you were not made to simply exist, you were made to live out purpose. I can remember when I was younger, looking at my life and thinking, this can't be it. On the outside, everything looked fine. The paycheck was coming, the routine was set, the people around me were comfortable, but the inside of me was restless. God had placed something in me that would not let me sit still and call it a life. That's what happens when you're marked. The normal, the average, the good enough starts to feel like a cage. You may not even know where God is leading you yet, but you know you can't stay where you are. It's like a baby eagle that starts flapping its wings in the nest before it ever understands what flying is. Something inside says, I was born for more than this. Even when life looks secure, the nest gets too small. Some of you are sitting in situations right now where everything on paper makes sense, but your spirit won't sit still. That's because your destiny isn't written on paper. It's written by the hand of God. And the ink of his purpose stains your soul in a way the world can't wash off. When God marks you, he plants an internal alarm clock in your spirit. And when the time is right, that clock starts ringing. And no matter how you try to silence it, with distractions, relationships, achievements, or entertainment, it just won't stop until you stand up and start walking in the direction he's called you to go. That restlessness is not your enemy, it's your reminder. Your reminder that your identity is tied to eternity, not to comfort. Your reminder that your assignment was written in heaven before the world ever got a chance to define you. So don't ignore that stir. Don't dismiss that inner frustration. God isn't trying to annoy you, he's trying to awaken you. That's the sound of your future calling you forward. That's the signature of the Almighty resting on your life, waiting for you to answer. You are marked. And when you're marked, you can't stay where you are. You can't settle for less. You can't fake contentment. You were made to move, to grow, to go further. You were designed for divine purpose, and your soul will stay restless until you step into it. When you are marked by God, opposition isn't just something you'll face. It's part of the plan. Many people think that when they are walking in God's will, everything will fall into place, the path will be smooth, and the winds will always be at their back. But let me tell you something. God doesn't build champions on easy streets. No, he prepares you in the furnace of affliction. If you look at any man or woman who's walked in greatness, you'll find a trail of difficulty behind them. And the truth is, those difficulties are not distractions from your purpose. They are the tools God uses to shape your destiny. When you're marked, God doesn't waste any of your pain. Every setback, every struggle, every painful moment is an opportunity for God to reveal more of his power in your life. Think about Joseph for a moment. He had a dream that was bigger than anything his circumstances or his family could understand. His brothers hated him because of it. They didn't just hate him, they plotted to destroy him. They threw him in a pit, sold him into slavery, lied about him, and left him for dead. On the surface, it seemed like his destiny had been cut short. But what they didn't realize was that every pit, every chain, every unjust accusation was part of the divine plan. God had to put Joseph through the pit to prepare him for the palace. If Joseph hadn't been sold into slavery, he wouldn't have ended up in Potiphar's house, where he learned how to manage and oversee. If he hadn't been thrown into prison, he wouldn't have met the cupbearer who would later remember him before Pharaoh. The setbacks weren't setbacks at all. They were setups for the purpose God had called him to fulfill. Now, you might be facing your own setbacks. Maybe you feel betrayed. Maybe you're wondering why things are so hard. You've been faithful, you've prayed, you've trusted, but still, life keeps knocking you down. I want to tell you today, your setback is not your sentence. Your trouble is not your termination. God has a way of using the very thing that the enemy meant for your harm and turning it around for your good. Remember, it's in the fire that gold is refined. It's in the crushing that the oil flows. When you're marked, it doesn't matter how many times you fall down, because God is always right there to pick you up. He's always working behind the scenes, turning every negative into a positive, every loss into a lesson, and every failure into a foundation for your future. So when the enemy tries to tell you that your setback is the end, you stand firm and declare, this is not the end of my story. This is the beginning of a new chapter. God is still writing my story. The setbacks don't define you. The God who is using them to make you stronger, wiser, and more prepared for your future is the one who has the final say. The story isn't over yet. Keep your eyes on the prize and trust that even when the road looks tough, God is still using it to position you for greater things. When you are marked by God, you begin to experience something that the world can't explain: favor. And I'm not just talking about regular run-of-the-mill favor. I'm talking about supernatural favor. Favor that opens doors you didn't knock on, opportunities you didn't seek, and blessings you don't deserve. You see, favor isn't fair, and that's because it's not based on your merit, but on God's grace. Have you ever had one of those moments when you look at a door that's been closed for so long, and suddenly out of nowhere it swings wide open? Or when someone comes into your life who has the power to elevate you to a place you never thought possible, and you realize that it wasn't because of your qualifications or your skills, it was simply the favor of God. Let me tell you something. Favor will make a way when logic says there's no way. You don't need to know the right people. You don't need to have the right connections. You don't need to have the right resume. All you need is the favor of God. It's the favor of God that will put you in rooms where you don't belong. It's the favor of God that will cause people to look at you and say, I don't know why, but I just feel like I need to help you. I've experienced this myself. There were times when I looked at opportunities and thought, there's no way I can do this. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the backing. I didn't have the experience. But then God stepped in and said, I've marked you, and because I've marked you, I'll make a way where there seems to be no way. You've heard the saying, God opens doors that no man can shut, right? But what people don't always realize is that sometimes God opens doors that no man even knows should be opened. He positions you in places where you are prepared for the opportunities ahead, even if you don't feel ready. And that's the beauty of divine favor. It doesn't require your perfection. It just requires your willingness. I'm sure you've experienced it at some point. That time when you walked into a situation and the favor of God was so thick that it felt like everyone around you was working in your favor, even when they didn't know it. Maybe it was a promotion you didn't ask for, or a blessing you didn't expect. That's favor in action. And when you're marked by God, favor becomes your constant companion. And here's the thing, God's favor doesn't just open doors for you, it empowers you to walk through them. It gives you the courage to step out of your comfort zone, the boldness to take risks that seem impossible, and the wisdom to navigate situations that would overwhelm others. When favor is on your life, it's not just about opportunities, it's about the confidence to seize them. People will look at you and wonder how you got to where you are. They won't understand it. They might even try to discredit you. But you'll know the truth. It's the favor of God that has brought you this far, and it's the favor of God that will carry you even further. So when doors open that you didn't knock on, don't be surprised. When opportunities find you that you didn't search for, don't be shocked. Just recognize the mark of God on your life and say, thank you, Lord, for your favor. Favor will elevate you, it will surround you, and it will protect you. When you are marked, favor will follow you like a shadow, and nothing will be able to block the good things God has in store for you. When you are marked by God, it doesn't always mean that everything in your life will make sense. In fact, there will be times when everything around you feels like chaos. People will come against you. Situations will seem out of control. You'll look at your circumstances and wonder, how is this all going to work out? But when God has marked you, He will give you something far more precious than answers. He'll give you clarity in the midst of the storm. It's like the story of the disciples in the boat caught in a violent storm. The waves were crashing, the wind was howling, they were sure they were going to drown. And yet in the middle of the chaos, Jesus was asleep. His peace wasn't dictated by the storm, it came from his clarity of purpose. He knew who he was and he knew what he was called to do. And when he woke up, he spoke to the storm and it obeyed. That's what it's like when you're marked by God. Life doesn't stop throwing storms at you, but you are equipped with a peace that transcends understanding. You may not have all the answers, but you know the one who does, and that makes all the difference. When you're marked by God, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need a roadmap. What you need is a clear sense of purpose. And when you have that, everything else falls into place. You'll walk through dark valleys, and yet you will know that you're not walking alone. The clarity that God gives you in those moments of uncertainty isn't a clarity of your circumstances, it's a clarity of your calling. That's what kept David steady when he faced Goliath. He didn't look at the giant in front of him, he looked at the God inside of him. He didn't need to know how God was going to deliver him. He just knew God was going to deliver him. That clarity of purpose gave him the courage to step onto the battlefield with nothing but a sling and a stone, knowing that his victory wasn't based on his strength, but on the power of the one who marked him. When you're marked by God, the noise of the world doesn't drown out your vision. The chaos of life doesn't distort your sense of direction. You can walk through the storm with the wind and waves crashing all around you and still have peace. Why? Because you know that God is with you. And sometimes that clarity comes in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes it comes through a quiet whisper in the stillness of your heart. Other times it might come through a word spoken in due season, a conversation with a friend, or even through a difficult experience that forces you to look to God more deeply. But what you can be sure of is this: when you're marked, the clarity of God's calling will never leave you. It might not always make sense in the moment, but it will always be enough to get you through. And that's how you can stand firm in the middle of life's greatest storms. Because you know that even in the chaos, God is still in control, and his purpose for your life remains unshaken. So when life throws you into confusion, don't despair. Don't get overwhelmed by the noise around you. Stand firm and remember that God has marked you. He will give you the clarity to see past the storm, past the distraction, and into the very heart of your calling. And that clarity will be the anchor that keeps you grounded, even when everything else feels like it's falling apart. When you are marked by God, one of the most powerful things you'll experience is divine protection. It's not just that God will keep you from harm, but he will surround you with a shield that no weapon formed against you can prosper. And when I say no weapon, I mean absolutely nothing. Not sickness, not betrayal, not failure, not the plots of your enemies can touch you unless God allows it. There's a protection over your life that cannot be explained by natural means, only by the supernatural hand of God. I remember a time in my own life when everything seemed to be falling apart. I faced challenges that could have broken me, circumstances that made me feel vulnerable and exposed, but through it all, I felt this deep, unwavering peace that I couldn't explain. It was as if there was a divine covering over me, like I was walking in a bubble of grace. The enemy would try to attack, but every time I found myself untouched, unharmed, and more determined than before. And I came to understand something profound. When you're marked, God's protection isn't just an invisible shield. It's an active force that surrounds you, guiding you, keeping you safe, even when you don't see it. Look at the story of Job. Job lost everything, his wealth, his health, even his family. Yet when Satan came before God and asked for permission to test him, God responded by saying, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him on earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil." What was God doing? He was protecting Job with his testimony. God himself stood as Job's protector, even when everything else seemed to be falling apart. And even though Job's faith was tested to its limits, God's hand of protection never left him. When you are marked, God knows exactly how far the enemy can go. The devil might form a weapon, but it won't prosper unless God allows it. Just like in the story of Daniel in the lion's den. The lions were there hungry and waiting. They were real threats, but God's protection was greater. Daniel didn't walk into that den with fear. He walked in knowing that God had marked him and would keep him safe. And God shut the mouths of the lions. It wasn't that the lions weren't there. It was that God's protection rendered them powerless. This is the kind of divine protection you can expect when God marks your life. It's not that harm won't come. It's not that you won't face trials, but it's that no matter what comes against you, God will either prevent it from harming you or turn it around for your good. You are shielded by the Almighty, covered by the blood of Jesus, and surrounded by his angelic hosts. In my own life, I've seen God protect me from situations I didn't even know were dangerous. There have been moments when I was walking into something unaware, and at the last second, God intervened. He put up barriers I couldn't see. He closed doors I didn't even know I should be avoiding. That's the divine protection of God working in ways we can't even fathom. When you are marked by God, even your setbacks are protected. The situations that look like they'll take you out, God will use them to build you up. The attacks from the enemy that are meant to destroy you, God will use them to strengthen you and advance you into the next season of your life. You might not always understand why things happen the way they do, but you can rest in this truth. When you're marked, God's protection is with you every step of the way. It's a protection that doesn't fail, a protection that cannot be shaken, and a protection that no force in this world can overcome. When you face challenges, when you go through storms, remember that you are not fighting alone. You have divine protection that shields you from the attacks of the enemy and guards your destiny. God will not let anything come into your life that he hasn't already equipped you to handle, and he will never let you walk through a trial without his presence surrounding you, strengthening you, and protecting you from the harm the enemy intended. When you are marked by God, one of the most undeniable signs is that your life begins to produce fruit. Not just any fruit, but fruit that lasts. I'm not talking about temporary success or fleeting accomplishments, but the kind of impact that leaves a mark long after you've walked out of the room. When God places his hand on you, it shows up in the way your life multiplies goodness, in the way your gifts make room for you, and in the way the people around you are changed by the evidence of God working through you. You see, fruit is the outward proof of an inward connection. A tree doesn't struggle to produce fruit if its roots are healthy and its soil is rich. It happens naturally as a byproduct of what's happening beneath the surface. The same is true when God marks your life. When you stay connected to him, when your heart is aligned with his will, fruit begins to show up in ways you couldn't manufacture even if you tried. I've seen this play out time and time again, not only in my own journey, but in the lives of others who have fully surrendered to God's call. People who, by the world's standards, didn't seem qualified or didn't have all the right connections, and yet their lives began to bloom. Their words started carrying weight. Their work started opening doors for others. Their influence began to stretch far beyond what their resources could explain. That's fruit, the kind only God can produce. The fruit that comes from being marked by God shows up in the form of character too. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These aren't just behaviors. They are the natural outflow of a life that has been touched and transformed by God. When people look at you, they begin to notice something different. You're not shaken like everyone else when trouble comes. You don't treat people the way the world says you should when they wrong you. You carry yourself with a peace that can't be explained and a strength that can't be bought. And the fruit doesn't stop at you, it multiplies through you. When you're marked by God, the people around you start to benefit from the overflow of what God is doing in your life. Your family starts to shift. Your community starts to transform. Your workplace begins to feel the ripple effect. You can walk into a room heavy with bitterness and tension, and because you're carrying the fruit of peace, the atmosphere begins to change. Think about the life of Jesus. Everything he touched multiplied. Every word he spoke left an eternal impact. Every life he encountered was never the same. That's the model of fruit bearing that God wants for you when you're marked. It's not about achieving something for applause or recognition. It's about producing something eternal, something lasting, something that outlives you. Even in seasons when life feels dry, when you don't see immediate results, the roots of your faith are still at work. God has a way of growing fruit in silence before the harvest ever shows up in public. And when it does, it won't be because of your strength or ability, but because of his faithfulness to finish what he started in you. When you're marked by God, fruit will follow you. It will show up in your decisions, your relationships, your influence, and your legacy. People will look at the evidence of your life and know, this isn't natural, this is the hand of God. Because when you're marked, fruit is not an option. It's the inevitable outcome of a life surrendered to the one who called you.